Hi, this is Jay for SimplyMaya, and welcome to this new tutorial where we're going to be creating eyeballs for our creatures and our characters. It's going to be a pretty basic setup just to get you going, as always. And first of all, the tutorial is going to be in two parts. The first part is mainly going to consist of modelling, a little bit of UV mapping, and the second part of the tutorial is going to consist of texturing, a little bit of shading, a little bit of rendering, and also some rigging as well to help you set up a rig to help you move the eyeballs around in sockets, stuff like that. So to kick us off, I'm going to create a polygon sphere like so, and just zoom in there like that and hit 5 on the keyboard, and I want to rotate that around the X 90 degrees like so, just so our eyeballs are facing forward down the Z axis. And what I'll do as well is we'll just freeze the transformations and the history on that as well. This particular part of the model, this is going to be the inner eyeball, because what we're going to do, we're going to create two spheres. One's going to be the inner eyeball, which is this one, and the second one, which we're going to pop here very shortly, is going to be the lens area and the sort of the clear part of the eye, the outer eye. This is a pretty common way of setting up an eyeball for your 3D characters, but as I said, this is going to be a real basic tutorial to get you going. And then after that, it's really down to you how you want to do it. You may want to go really in depth and get some eyeball anatomy images off Google or off the web somewhere to sort of build a more intense sort of model of an eye. So what we're going to do first is I'm just going to go into face mode, and we're going to delete the back of the eye because really we're not going to need it. We're not going to be modelling nerve endings and muscles and stuff like that that connect the eye to the eye socket. But I can leave that down to you. If you wish to have your eyeballs popping from the sockets of your characters or your creatures, that's fine. But I'll leave that down to you. And then what we're going to do next is I'm just going to zoom in, and I'm going to get rid of every other edge inside the centre here, because as you can see, it's all triangulated, and I'm a real stickler for quads. So I'm just going to delete every other one, I beg your pardon, and I'm just going to delete those like so. So now I've got four-sided polys on the inside as well. Okay, so let's just get back to our object mode, and I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate that, and we're going to just move that across like so. So now we've got two parts, our inner eye and our outer eye. And the best thing to do from here is just label those. So we're going to call this inner eye. I'm doing this via the channel box. You can do this through the attribute editor or the outliner as well if you wish to choose, or you wish to do so. And that one there, we'll call that outer eye. Okay, so that's all good. Okay, so first of all, what we want to do is we want to start placing this geometry here towards the front of this inner eyeball, so it resembles sort of some of the anatomy that you can pick up on the web and have a look at, and some other tutorials as well that do create eyeballs within Maya or Max or whichever is your chosen bit of software. So what we're going to do first of all is I'm just going to switch to a side view and choose vertex, and I'm going to choose these front row here, hit R to bring out the scale tool, and I'm just going to squeeze those till they're all flat, and I'm just going to move them inward like so. So if we jump back to our perspective view, you can see what it's looking like. And another good thing of doing it this way is you can also judge where you can sort of place your textures for your iris and your pupils as well when you come to do your texturing and stuff like that. But before we go ahead and do all that stuff, let's add a couple of edge loops just to sort of begin to make this look a little bit better. Let's just grab that like that. Okay, like so. And what we'll do, pop another one there as well, and another one just inside there. I'm doing this just so I can have a little bit more play when it comes to do the UVs and stuff like that, and also I may want to sort of add a little bit more shape to the inner part of this eye, maybe later on down the line, but we'll see how we go with the rest of the model first. So what we want to do now is select the centre of this eye. This is going to be the sort of the beginning of where the pupil is in the centre, and what we're going to do, we're going to extrude that back inwards of this inner eye. Again, it's always worth having a look at some anatomy of eyes on the web, and you'll see what I mean if you go and have a look at that. We'll just push this in like so. Okay, that's pretty good. And again, you can always keep checking, see how you're doing in the side view. And I'll do another one. And another one. Like so. So that should sort of finish off the inner area just there. And also I'm going to add one there, and just one on the inside there as well. And the one here, if I can just grab it. Okay, there we go. Just going to squeeze that and move that forward. And we'll just take it back just a tiny bit there and push that to there. So that really is what's going to give us our inner eyeball. And let's just grab that. Actually, we'll just take it in a little bit more. We'll just smooth that out like so. And that should do that. So it's not looking too bad. Okay, so now what we want to do is the outer eye. And again, if you do sort of refer to some form of reference, you'll notice that the outer eye, the front lens of the eyeball, is more. It's not so much round. It's more sort of spherical, and the front will sort of tend to stick out more in a sort of a more of an arc, as my mouse cursor is showing you at the moment. So what we want to do for that is grab this set of verts, I beg your pardon, and just move those slightly offset like so. And if we just jump back into our perspective view, now if I just zoom out, you can see what I mean. It's just sticking out a little bit awkwardly, but it's also very useful to see it like this as well, just so you get an idea of what it really does look like. And when you come to do the shading, you can get some nice sort of light specular effects from one part of the eye to the other, even if you're using one light in the scene. It's pretty cool actually when you come to see it. So what we're going to do now is going to add some extra geometry just in here. So I'm going to put one there. I'm just going to scale that up ever so slightly, and I'm going to pop one just in here, and again just going to move that out like so. And then for this one, just going to slide that forward ever so slightly there. And again, we'll just tweak this a little bit more. And I think what we'll do, we'll add another one just to the inside of there as well. And then we'll scale that up and jump into our side view. So as you can see, it's probably a little bit too square there. So what we'll do, we'll scale that back. Let's just do this one first. There we go, that's better. And we'll just grab that one and do the same with that. So far so good. And there we go. So what we'll do is we'll show these in shaded. So as you can see, that's our sort of two parts to our eye. And the other thing as well that's always worth doing with this is just scaling the outer eye just ever so slightly, just up and outside the inner eye, so you don't get any intersection, stuff like that, when you come to do rendering, things like that. So really try and sort of do that as well. Okay, so we're ready to do a little bit of UV mapping, and I'm not going to go into super in depth, but I'm just going to show you how I myself will sort of attempt to do the UVs for this shape. I'm only going to do one of these because it's really kind of self-explanatory. Once I've done one, it can really the whole thing can transfer to the next one as well, if you like. And with eyeballs like this, I tend to use the planar mapping option along the axis that the object is facing. So in this case, this is actually facing down the z-axis, and so what I'm going to be doing is using the planar option across the z-axis, and then we'll get a UV map out of that, and we'll get that into Photoshop, and we'll begin to put our textures in the next part. So before I do that, let's grab our hypershade as well. There we go. And what I'm going to do, I'll create a blend for the inner eye, and I'm going to create a Fong-E for the outer eye. And the Fong-E is really good because you can pick up some really sharp highlights and stuff, which I'll just show you very quickly now. You can adjust the roughness and stuff on the highlights. So if I just boost the whiteness and the specular colour, and you can see how this is all sort of affected just by changing the roughness and the highlight size. You can get a nice looking highlight there as well. So that's what we're going to be using for the outer eye, and the blend for the inner eye. We're really going to sort of just turn off the majority of the specular settings. We'll keep them very, very low on that because we're not going to need them, because this Fong-E is going to be doing all the work. But before we do jump to that, we're going to need some UV maps and stuff done, and we're going to need some textures and everything else. So I'm just going to jump into my UV layout. So as you can see in here, what I've got, these are the sort of edited, these are what's left of the UVs that come in with a standard sphere. Let me just show you. If I bring in a sphere like so, let's just move that away. So these are what the UVs look like for the actual primitive sphere before any editing was done. But this is unfortunately what we've got with the sphere after we've been sort of cutting it and adding edge loops and stuff like that too. So let's get rid of that. And so what we want to do, we want to get a nice round sort of image map that we can output to Photoshop, where we can paint up some textures and stuff for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my polygon menu, create UVs, and I'm going to assign a shader to projection. So when that comes up, we'll have a shader already assigned. That's better. We'll have a shade already assigned to this, so we can see what we're doing. So I'm just going to hit 5. Actually, we'll hit 6, so we can show the texture that we'll have once we've done a projection. So create UVs, planar mapping, and make sure it's on the Z-axis or Z-axis, whichever country you're from, and then just hit project. As you can see, there we go, and there's our projection in our UV texture editor. So basically overall it's a pretty good map, but the main problem we're going to be getting is we're going to get these edges here are going to overlap each other. So if I just deselect that, and let's just turn off the image, the checkered image that we have here, you can just turn it off there with the display image icon there. And what we can do is just double click that edge. You can see that that edge, despite it being at the back, it's actually still intersecting through there, and that's not really any good to us because we're going to be painting on that area if we take that into Photoshop now. So what we really want to do is we're going to convert that to UVs, which I've just used the icon there, but you can go to select, convert selection to UVs if you wish, like so, and oops, let's just deselected that, let's reselect that. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to scale those UVs up to the outer part of that UV shell that we have there. And again, I'm going to do the same for the next bit, like so. So nothing's overlapping. I don't want any overlapping. I could use unfold, but it's not really sort of guaranteed to fix it for me straight away. So I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way, like so. And again, just going to spread those out just a little bit more, and let's just make those a little bit bigger just so we can see what we're doing. So I'm just selecting the edges here, or attempting to, there we go, and then converting the edge selection to a UV selection via a shortcut on my shelf. So we'll leave that one there like so. And again there, let's just do the same there. That's better. And we'll just converting that one over as well. Okay, so hopefully now we won't have any UVs that are overlaps. No, we're pretty good there. So that's good. So if I do that, if I over enlarge it, you can see where the UVs are overlapping. Okay. So I think what we need to do is space those out. As you can see, the UVs there are very, very rough. But now what we can do is begin to actually use the unfold. So if I use unfold, as you can see, it does actually space those out a little bit more. And by hitting the G key, you can now start to unfold those a little bit. And usually, most of the time, this does do it quite well once you sort of manually tweak them. So let's have a go and see how we get on. We may have to do a little bit more tweaking, but it shouldn't be anything too drastic. Oops. Let's grab those there. And there. Whoops. As a side note, if you can download bonus tools for Maya 2011, it does have some pretty good UV unwrap tools, very similar to Roadkill, but you get, I think what you get is you get a better sort of little interface that comes up on the in the Maya window. It enables you to add border edges and things like that to your selections. The actual part of the plugin within bonus tools is called UV unwrap, and it's very, very good. I find it very fast, and it's also very, very useful if you're creating pipes or something like that, and it can unwrap them really, really fast with some pretty good results. You only have to do some minor tweaking, so do check that out. It's on bonus tools, which I think you can still download for Maya 2011 on the area website, or you could try Creative Crash as well. Have a look on there just in case, because that place is full of freebie plugins as well, so you won't have to pay for anything. Okay, so that's not too bad. Although this map here is not giving us a very good representation of our sphere. Generally, because of the shape of this, you're going to get this kind of oddity going on. But the main thing is we shouldn't have too much stretching and stuff. So let's just double click that just to see what's going on with that one, and we'll just convert that. Just hit unfold just to balance that one out a bit more. That's better. That's pretty good. And then what we need to do now, because I want to optimize the space of this UV, I could UV map, do a projection for this one as well, and place both of these in the same UV tile. But what I want to do is actually just do the whole thing on just this one, because we're going to be using a separate material. So I'm just going to scale that to fit pretty much exactly inside this square here. So then what we can do later on is output that and hopefully take it into Photoshop and paint that up. So that will cover the first part of this tutorial. So basically what we've done, we've created the inner eye, the outer eye, which we've still to UV map, but I'll get that ready and done for the next section using exactly the same technique as what I've used for this. And yeah, so we've basically just covered some very, very basic modelling stuff to create this eyeball, and hopefully in the next section we can carry on and do our texturing and get those put onto the eyeball models along with the shaders, and do a little bit of test rendering, and also we'll set up a nice little rig just so you can get some movement on the eyeball. So I hope you've enjoyed that first section, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers for now. Okay, so welcome to part 2. As you may remember from the first part, we did the UVs on this one, and I finished them off for this part in particular. And what we're going to do, first of all, before we carry on, I'm just going to, I believe I still have some history from some poly projections and tweaking, so we're just going to delete the history on those. So delete that for now, like so. And what we need to do now is we need to export this UV out as a 2D image into Photoshop so we can paint some colour textures and stuff on that. So first of all, what we're going to do, we're going to jump straight into the UV texture editor, go to the polygon menu set, go down to UV snapshot, and I've kept the resolution for this 1024 just for this exercise. It's entirely up to you what resolution you use for this, and also I'm just using this as a JPEG image as well, because it's just a UV map for us to get a guide so we can put in our iris and our pupil colours and a little bit of white and a few little red veins going on there for our texture. And then what we're going to do, we're going to navigate all the way up to my eyeball rig folder, which is already open, and I'm going to save this one out as inner eye. As you can see, I've already got one in there, but we'll overwrite that one, and I've saved that as inner_eye_UV, so you know what you're looking at when you come to open that in Photoshop. So we're going to save that, so we'll just overwrite that, and that's okay, that's done. And we'll do the same again for the outer eye, and we'll go to UV snapshot, and we'll go again. I've got one already done, but we'll save over that, and again that's the same size as the other one as well, so that's all done. Okay, cool, so we're ready to go there, and just jump back into my layouts, go back to the render view, and what I need to do is apply the two shaders that we prepared in the last part, the blend shader and the Fong shader. And before we do that, let's just hit 5 on our keyboard. Actually we'll hit 6 so we can see that we've still got our projection shader on there. So what we need to do is the blend is going to be used for the inner eye, so we'll just chuck it on there like so. And what we'll do is we'll give that a quick rename in the attribute editor for the material itself, and we'll call that inner eye _M, And I'll just explain the M in a second, once we've done the Fong E for the outer eye as well. Okay, so we'll just grab that. Okay, so we'll call that outer eye underscore M. Okay, now the reason I've put those, I've given them the names with the M on the end, is basically it just means material for these two. So these two materials will have underscore M, because if we select the object here, you can see we've got inner underscore eye, and then you've got inner underscore eye shape, which is basically what the polygon object here is made of. But also we've got the inner underscore IM for material. So you can see if we have a lot of these inner eyes, we need to be able to differentiate what they are within Maya. It's no point having inner eye, inner eye, inner eye all the way along there without something to sort of tell you what this actually is. So by putting the M on the end of these, it means these are actually the materials for those particular eyes. And you'll find that with a lot of things in Maya. If you have a lot of the same names, usually what Maya will do is it will put a number on the end of it, and that's not really very tidy. It's okay if it's got a name on, but you really want to be able to, you know, tell what you're actually looking at within Maya. And it's also helpful if you're working in a pipeline, so someone can just look at it and go, okay, that's for that, and they can just navigate straight to what they need to go to. So it's just one of those things worth bearing in mind when you're creating big scenes and stuff like that. So anyway, without further ado, let's carry on. So that's done. We've got the inner and outer eye materials put onto our objects, and what we need to do now is create some textures. So we're going to just jump over into Photoshop like so, and as you can see, I've already got a texture ready to go. Let's just close that off, whatever that was. So yeah, this is ready to go. This is something I pulled off the internet, off of Google. I did a search for some high-res images for eyeballs and came across some really lovely stuff. And this is one of the best ones I found. It's one of the most simple ones as well, so we've not really got a lot of editing to do to it. What I really want to do is just sort of cut this in half or into a quarter, and then so it helps us easily get rid of these sort of reflections and highlights and stuff that we can use to apply to our eyeball once we get back into Maya. Okay, so what we need to do is open up our UV map. So what we're going to do is the inner eye first, so we'll open that up like so. This is the UV map that we exported or did a snapshot of, and what I want to do first is actually create a new layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circular selection like so and fill that with red, and I'm going to use this as a clipping mask so I can keep the eyeball exactly very circular, completely circular, without any sort of asymmetrical stuff going on. As you can see here on the image, the actual pupil is slightly off center, but because this is just an exercise, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shift it over ever so slightly and get it to sit dead center so it doesn't look a bit skewed, so it doesn't look skewed in Maya when we come to render stuff out. As you can see, it is off center, and you'll find that most pupils and stuff are, but just for this exercise we'll do a little bit of editing just to make the eyeball look quite nice. But for your own stuff, if you're doing realism, go for it. Just keep it as near as damn it as you can in accordance with your reference. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to grab this guy, and I'm going to, with the shift key pressed down and dragging the circular selection, I'm just going to make that constrained as best as I can there, and then what I'll do, I'll just transform the selection, just move it around a little bit like so. Let's get that dark outer edge as much as I can there. That's better. Okay, and I'll just hit enter, and we'll do Control C to copy and Control V to paste. As you can see, we're using a very high res image over a fairly low res UV template. So what I'm going to do is just scale that down just so I can see what's going on, and that's that bit done, and we'll just scale that back up. And what I'm going to do is, with the Alt key pressed down, and if you click on the line between the two layers, what you can actually do is get the uppermost layer to clip against the lower layer. So we've got the shapes that we can work in, like so. So you can see it cuts it. It's called clipping. It's a very useful little tip that I tend to use quite a lot. So what we'll do there, and what we'll do, we'll just scale it down just a little bit more. Like so. And what I'm going to do now is make a copy of the UV map itself and put that above everything, and put that on I think a screen that I need actually. Screen, there we go. So that's in screen mode now, so that's actually overlaid over this, and I'm just going to connect those two up, and I'm just going to move them across, just with a little bit of moving around there with the move tool. So just try and center that up as best we can there, like so. And what I'm going to do is just going to turn that off, like so. And before we go ahead and do any cutting and pasting, what we're going to be doing is just going to make sure that everything lines up as we want it in Maya. So what we're going to do now is save a quick copy off as a test. So we're going to call this inner eye color. Okay, like so. Just as a JPEG. And we'll just put that to 12. Okay, and what we'll do, we'll jump into Photoshop, beg your pardon, back into Maya, grab our inner eye shaded material and go to the color channel, and we'll go and find our color file that we've just made. And there it is there. So there we go. So we'll just open that up, have a look, and we'll see how we're doing. So as you can see, this is very, very big at the moment, and we really need to scale this down quite a lot in order to fit the front of our eye. So we're going to jump back over, and a good way to have a look at this would probably be by just if we put our wireframe on, we can then sort of judge where we really need to be from the judging the front view here. So we want to be around sort of here, this area here. So if we jump back in and we have a look, I would say we want to be around here for that. So just by scaling that down and just recenter that, let's just go all the way down like so. Another thing you can do as well when you're in Photoshop, if you want to center things up, what you can do is add some guides that you can lock your layer to. And what we'll do is we'll do some new guides. So we'll do a new guide. So we'll do this because we're using 1024 size map, we'll do half of that, so that's 512. And we'll hit PX for pixels. So that'll give us a guide halfway, exactly like that. And then what you want to do is do another one for horizontal and do the same again. Now depending on what version of Photoshop you have, it might be in a different place. I'm still using Photoshop CS, so I don't have any need for any of the new versions so far, so we'll just hit OK on that, and as you can see, that's all centered up quite well there. So what we want to do is grab our eyeball. As you can see, it's snapping into place through the center. So I'm just going to shift that over just a little bit. And we'll center that there. And as you can see, we still need to center that pupil area there, but for now we'll leave that because I'm more concerned about the amount of area that the actual iris is covering for the actual eye itself. So save as again, we'll just save over that previous JPEG. Okay, like so. Okay, that's done. Back into Maya, reload, and there we go. So that's a lot better. That's pretty much exactly where we want that. So that's really good. I'm pleased with that. So that's already starting to fall into place, which is great, which is what we want. Okay, so what we can do now is start to sort of center stuff up and begin a little bit of image editing to get that all looking a bit better put it a bit more on center as well for the pupil. So just jump back, and again we'll just select that, make sure we're on the right layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift constrain again, like so, and I'm just going to make sure that we get the right size just by squeezing those up just a little bit on the selection, like so. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is Control C, Control V, so we've got a layer of that beg your pardon, pupil, and then we'll just lock that into the center of our image there. So that's good to go. So as you can see, it's a little bit skew. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to select the marquee tool, the rectangular version, and we're just going to go in and we're going to cut that part clean in half. Again, so we're going to do Control C, Control V for copy paste, and then I'm going to edit, transform, flip that horizontal, and that's like so. And as you can see, it's come out of the clipping group. So what we'll do is we'll just clip that back, so that's a bit more on center now, and then we can merge that down, which is Control E on your keyboard. So that's not looking too bad, so that's better. Okay, so what we can do now is I'm going to actually begin to edit this image now. So as you can see, we've got some funny strange stuff going on here, and we're getting the repeated mirror part on the texture here. So we're just going to quickly get rid of some of that stuff, because obviously we've got a little bit more to get on with this tutorial, so we don't want to be hanging around doing lots of fixing and stuff like that. This is just to get you started, really, just to get you going. Okay, so that's not too bad. And then we'll just, I'm just using the clone tool here just to get rid of the highlight. I'm using a soft brush as well, so it doesn't give us too harder edges if we do sort of go outside our selection, like so, which is pretty good. Okay, so you should have something like that, and then what we'll do, we'll merge that down. And let's just unclip that, like so, and we'll merge that down into that layer. So that's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so we don't have any use for that at the moment, but what we will do is we just go back to our color image here, and we're going to select the sort of the white color of that. So as you can see in the picture, it's a slightly off white, so you can see through sort of various colors that we have going on in here. So I'm trying to find a bit more of a pinkish white, which isn't too bad, that one. But again, we want it to sort of blend in, make it all look pretty good. Let's just move that over. That's a bit too pink, so what we'll do is just bring it up ever so slightly, hit OK, and then what we'll do is we'll create a new layer, and we'll just fill that with the colour that we have there. Okay, so as you can see, we've got a slight overlay there. So what I've done is just re-clip that on the back of that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge that down, whoops, into that one. That's like so. I'm going to create another copy of that, and then we're going to use this underneath. So we're going to call this I, and then we'll just call this dark, just to give us this sort of darker blurred area on the back of that. And what I'll do is quickly select the colour there, which is about there, and we'll grab that and we'll fill that with that colour, and then what we'll do is we'll blur that. So we get a sort of dark edge. As you can see, it's starting to appear on the outside there. So what I'll do, I'll double up that layer. Do a few times on that, just to make it a bit darker, and then we'll just merge those down, like so. And let's have a look, see how that's looking. That's looking pretty good. So again, we'll save that. As eye colour. Okay. And again, we'll jump back into Photoshop. Beg your pardon, Maya again. There we go. So it's looking a lot better. And we'll just turn off our. So as you can see, it's getting there. Okay, so we'll leave that like that for now. I'm not going to put the veins on for this. What I want to do is create the colour maps, the main colour map that we have here. Also, I want to create this sort of the specular and the illuminance map for this as well, so you can see how it looks for the rendering. The veins and stuff I'm not too concerned about for this exercise. This is really to get you going, as I keep saying, and get it looking like a decent eyeball. Okay, so we'll just jump straight back in, and what we can do as well, I think, is I'll grab that and we'll make another blurred copy of this, not too much. Like so. So that it blends in just a little bit better, so it's a bit softer around the edge there, like you can see. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so far. So that's all good. Right, so what we'll do, we'll save that as our colour map, like so. Okay. Okay. Right, so what we want to do now is we're going to create a bump map, and we're also going to create a luminance map to bring out the colour a little bit more for the eye itself. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make another copy of that. We're going to call this luminance. Like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to desaturate this. Okay, like so. And I'm going to turn that layer off, and that one, and that one. And I'm just going to duplicate the background, like so. And I'm going to fill that with black. Okay? So this black area isn't actually going to show when we come to make the luminance. And now what we're going to do now is actually adjust the contrasts for these tones in here. And really what we want to try and get is really, it's quite an intense black and white. So by using the brightness and contrast, we can really start to pull these areas out until they sort of start to blend with the rest of the black background, which is what I find sort of works quite well for this kind of stuff. As you can see, we've got a little bit of sort of edging going on up there, which is where we've probably done a little bit of editing to that, but we'll just do a little bit of that, like so. And we'll just increase that contrast again, like that. Okay, and then maybe we can have a look at the levels as well. Okay, so start to play around with these bits like so. This is where it gets a little bit, starts getting a bit tricky, and then you can just sort of adjust if there's any information left over, because all this is sort of being clipped into one sort of area. And again, you can obviously use the other tools and stuff in Photoshop to get a better result than what I'm doing here, but this will give you an idea of how to create those particular sort of black and white tones. What I'm going to do is we're just going to burn that area in just around there, and what we want to do is the highlights just up there. I'll just increase the exposure like so. And what I'm going to do is do this all the way around, so the edges blend in a bit better as well. So I think we can increase that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brighten these areas just in here as well, just to give us a little bit more contrast to play with. Okay, so now we can start to do this sort of stuff with it, which is what I wanted it to do. That's better. This is the sort of thing I was after. So again, you have to really sort of play around with your settings in Photoshop. Obviously I'm doing this quick for the sake of this tutorial. You can spend a fair amount of time getting it to and customize it to your particular needs. Okay, so and we'll just darken those down a little bit as well. And just grab the brightness and contrast again, just to bring that down a little bit. That's not too bad, so that's pretty good. So that's good to go, I would say, for now. What we could do, we could probably grab this top bit and copy and paste that around like we've been doing with the rest of the eye. Okay, so, but for now, just for this test, we'll save that as an eye luminance. Now we'll just call that inner eye loom. Okay, like so, and we'll just save that out. Okay. Okay, so that's done. And so the next bit we want to do is we want to make a specular map. So what I'm going to do for this next part, I'm just, instead of creating tons and tons of layers on this, I'm just going to get rid of that, because we don't need that any longer. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this like so, and I'm going to turn the dark off there, and we're going to turn this into a grayscale image, and I don't want to flatten it just yet. Let's get rid of those, and the black background. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to adjust the contrast on the eye here for our for our bump and sort of bits of specular and stuff. So again, just going to increase the contrast and stuff. Again, play around with this until you get it satisfactory for what you want as well. So let's just, so that's quite good for a bump in there. What I'm going to do as well is just darken this area, because this is quite bright. So again, just going to grab my burn tool, just go in, just darken it down as you see fit. Okay, like so. I'm using a mouse here at the moment, so it's a bit of a pain, but it's not too bad. So that's okay. So we're going to call this. We're going to save this one as a bump for that part of the eye. And also, what I will do is add a small amount of noise, just to give it a little bit of sort of texture on that, on the white background area. So I'll just add a little bit of noise. It's probably a bit too much. So take it right back. Make sure that's mono. Just take that right down. Don't want it too much. Just want a hint of something there. So let's just do 1. Let's just type 1.5 just to make sure. Okay, like so. And then what we'll do is we'll save that as the bump. Okay, like so. Okay, and then I'm just going to create another eye just over the top of that, and we'll call that spec. Okay, so turn that one off. So just take down. I don't want too much specular for the inner eye, because the luminance map is going to do a fair bit for this as well. So I'll just sort of leave it around there, I think, just to give it a few little bits of kick when we come to do a little bit of shading. We'll save that as a spec. Again, I'm doing this really quick. Generally I would take more time, but because we've got a little bit more to get through for this tutorial, I'm just getting this stuff done in the time that we have without trying to bore you to tears. So you'll have to excuse me if this all seems a little bit sort of fast and furious. Okay, so what we want to do now is another map. We need to open our outer eye. Okay, as you can see here, we've got our where we put that crease in on the model. We've added the extra edge loop just so we get that nice little sort of bump between the lens and the rest of the eye. So what we want to do is, I'm just going to duplicate that layer, and we're going to turn this one into a white layer, and let's see if we can get that to overlay. No, let's see which one it is. Let's just use one of those for now. In fact, let's put it on normal, and we'll just drop the opacity ever so slightly so we can see, just about see through there. That'll do for that. And what I want to do is, I'm just going to add some noise really to this map in particular, but I'm going to invert this selection so it just does the outer part, because I don't really want any noise on the front part of this lens. So I'm just going to adjust the selection, and this will give us a nice sort of little pickups and little sort of bumpy bits and stuff like that when we come to do some rendering. So we'll just move this around like so, and we'll just pick that up and just pop this into position. Okay, like so. And then what we'll do is we'll do Control-Shift-I, which will invert the selection. And what we'll do is we're going to feather that as well. That's 5, so let's do 10, just so it gets a bit of a feather on that sort of area there. And then filter, we'll go noise, add noise, and we'll just boost the noise up ever so slightly on that. and this is just going to give us a bit of a bump on our eye shine, if you like. Okay, like so. Because not every eye is exactly smooth, so you want some variation going across the surface, I think. Let's just drop that down just a bit more. So about there is fine for what we need, and then we'll just turn that over. As you can see there, you can just make that out, what's going on there. You can see the soft edge just on there between the noise and the clear area. So what we'll do, we'll save that out as another JPEG. So we'll call that outer eye bump. Okay, so we're ready to go, and what we're going to do, we're going to jump back into Maya, and we'll start loading up the rest of these maps. So we'll just reload that one for now, just to make sure everything's okay. And then on this one, the outer eye, we want a bit of transparency to go on there, and what we'll do, we'll put that bump map on there first. So we're going to find our bump. So outer eye bump, there we go, and then we'll just go back up and we'll drop that right down to about 0.01, which is a fairly low value, but it's always a good starting point, and you can obviously go lower than that afterwards. And then what we want to do is jump back to our inner eye, and we're going to map the ambient color channel first, and for that one we're going to use the luminance. So we want our luminant. There we go, so we'll just open that up, and it may be too bright, it may be not, so what we'll do, we'll just have to wait until it comes to doing a little bit of rendering and see how we get on with that. But what that will do is it will really sort of bring out these colours and stuff on the iris itself. And also we want to put the bump map on as well. So inner eye bump. And we'll open that out, and again we'll just drop the bump value right down to 0.01 again, okay, like so, and then we'll nip down to our specular, and what we'll do, we'll actually leave that off for now, because sometimes the Fong E shader really does a good job, and because we've got that bump map actually on the outer eye as well, we may not need to worry. So now what we need to do is move this back into position. If you recall from the last chapter, I didn't freeze the transformations for that, but I'm going to do that now by grabbing both of those, and we're just going to hit FT as I have on my shelf there, which is freeze transformations, so everything's now back to 0, and you can also get that from the modify menu up the top here, so which is great. Okay, so we're ready to render. I think that's pretty good to go. And what I will do is I'm going to group these guys together by pressing Ctrl G, and we're going to call this eyeball group. GRP for group, which is great, which is cool. Okay, so within that group we will have the inner eye and the outer eye, and if we just go into our outliner, there's the groups there, so that's all good. Okay, so first of all, we're ready to render, so let's throw a light into our scene. So we're just going to use a directional, actually we'll use a spotlight I think for this, and we'll just move this across, and also I'll just go to my render layout as well, and we'll look through selected camera, which is the spotlight camera, and we'll just pull out a little bit there like so. Okay, and then what we can do is we'll just go to our attributes for our lights. It's the default is 1 for the intensity, and we'll put our shadows on as well, and we'll use some ray trace shadows. We'll just leave those on standard, but what we will do is we'll just brighten up the shadows a little bit because we don't want anything too dark. So as you can see, we've got our shaders to play with as well. We'll probably really concentrate on the outer eye one for the main part of this tutorial. The inner eye we'll probably leave alone for most of the time, except for when we come to adjust the luminance on the ambient channel. And what is missing from here is we just throw in a ground plane as well, just to see what our shadows are doing, just for rendering sake. And I'll just hit 5 on the keyboard, just so we can see what we're doing. And again, we'll just line that up. That's good enough, like so. And we'll just get our eyeball into a fairly good composition and go back to our render view. We're in mental ray, so it's pretty good. So we should have a half decent render with a bit of luck. So we'll do our first render. Let's just check our test resolution. It's quite high, so we'll put that to 800 by 600 just for now. And just put our wireframe with our shaded on as well. And we'll do our first test render. So if we go render, we'll do our perspective view. Just see what happens with this. And there we go. So it's not looking too bad. Let's just zoom in there. As you can see, we've got quite a lot of reflection going on, and you can see the luminance maps sort of doing its job here by really, really throwing that colour quite violently. It's making it very vibrant and stuff like that. So what we need to do first is, I think we'll turn down our reflectivity on our outer eye on the eye shine. But what we will do is drop the highlight size as well. It's 0.15 is a pretty good starting point. And then also we jump into our ambient colour for our luminance, and we'll just turn down the colour gain under the colour balance channel there, so it just makes it a little bit darker. And what we'll do, we'll store the first render like so. And what we'll do as well, if we just select camera, and we'll just scroll down to environment, let's just make it a brighter sort of colour, so we don't have this black background while we're rendering. Okay, so that's our first render, and I think we can actually now increase our resolution for our render. And what we'll do, you may notice the edges of the eyeball are a little bit faceted, so we're going to hit the smooth 3 on the keyboard for that, just to make sure we get a nice round eyeball. And also what I'm going to do as well, we're going to turn off the filtering for the textures, because these filter types sometimes tend to blur your image maps. So what we'll do, we'll just turn that off, and we'll do the same with the ambient colour. We'll just turn everything off, and we'll just nip down to the bump map, and we'll do that as well. So that's all good. And what we want to do as well, we want to start to pick up a little bit of bump on the outer eye as well, and we'll make that quite transparent now. So just colour doesn't matter. So we just go up to our bump node. Where is it? There it is. So let's make that 2.5 for now. Okay, and let's just increase the bump a little bit more for the inner eyeball as well. Okay, so we've got an image stored, so that's our first one done. And now what we're going to do is we'll do another render and see how we're getting on. So that's not too bad. Again, I'm still getting quite a lot of pickup here from the from the luminance on the inner eye there. So again, we can really drop that right down, but you can see from the first image as well, this area here, it's really eased off, so it's looking quite good now. So again, we'll store that and we'll do another render. So that's not too bad, that's better, that's a lot better now. And what I think we can do is, let's see what happens if we increase the bump value for that. So I'm going to put that right up to let's say 0.1, which will be 100. But we'll do a render anyway, just to see what happens here. As you can see, it's starting to push that out a little bit more. So compared to that, so it's probably a bit too much. So let's do 0.08, and that's a bit better. That's more like it. That's good. Okay, so what we can do now is if we just go to our lights, okay, and I'm just going to adjust the light angle ever so slightly, and we'll just drop that down a little bit as well. Okay, and hopefully we should get a bit of a better highlight coming off of that. There we go. This is what I was looking for. This double-edged highlight. There's only one light in the scene, but we're getting a nice double edge going on there. This is due to the this difference in sort of surfaces here, where we've modelled the extra sort of bump, so it picks that up. And if you can, you should be able to sort of get that to render out nicely with the characters and stuff like that. It really makes a difference to the eyes. See, there we go. You can see this as well is really beginning to pick up the surfaces of the outer eye as well. So if we go back to our materials, and we can actually increase, I think, the bump on that ever so slightly. Let's do that to 0.4. So with a bit of luck, and also what we'll do, we'll just increase the highlight size, I think, to about 0.303. And well, let's just see what happens. There we go. So it's probably a bit too much. Again, you can, test this to your heart's content, but hopefully this should give you an idea of what to look for while you're doing this. So that's a lot better now. And also another thing to bear in mind as well is you can make this the inner eye refract as well, so you get a bit more sort of volume going on there. And if you do look at an eye from the side, you will find that you'll get all sorts of different sort of refraction and stuff going on if you look at it. So if we just turn that on, we'll just do another render. We'll just put that up to about 1.3, I believe, and we'll do another render, and you should see a difference in the way that it actually. There you go. You can see that that's actually sort of beginning to pop out a little bit now, and the noise is probably a bit too harsh on the outer eye now. But if you compare that, that's what the refraction is now doing to the eye. So we can probably drop that back to about let's do 0.1. And again, if we just go and put our image in there, and then we can do a comparison. So let's drop that back a little bit more. We can see a little bit of the eye white coming through there. So you can see that that's a bit more subtle going on there now, which is a lot better. And also, again, we're getting this nice sort of highlight thing going on here. And also, don't forget what you can do as well is you can map the reflection channel here in the reflected colour. So you might want to reflect a background. At the moment I'm not using anything because it's really not worth it for this. It's kind of pointless because we're not really reflecting anything but a ground plane and a white background. But when you come to put it into characters or creatures and stuff, you can, and you've got those in the environment, you may want to put an environment sort of reflection map in there as well, just to give it a little bit more kick and show a few more highlights and background and stuff. So yeah, so that's that. Let's just turn down the bump on that and do one more test render, and then we'll move on to our very last part of our tutorial as soon as we've done this, which will be a little bit of rigging just to get you to see how you can get your eyeballs to move around. Let's just turn that right down to 1.15, and again we'll just do a quick render for that. That's sort of not too bad. I think that's probably more on the bump file there for the inner eyeball. So let's make that 0.05, and we'll just store one more image and see how we're getting on. There we go, that's better. That's toned that down a lot more now. Yeah, that's better. So that was all going on in there. So as you can see, our eyeball is pretty much ready to go. You could use that on a simple character or whatever you want. So yeah, that's basically a very basic setup. And again, as I've said, I've gone through it quickly because we've had a lot to cover in this tutorial. Okay, so moving on to the last part of our tutorial now. Let's just turn our grid off. What we're going to do is we're going to add a very simple rig using a couple of constraints, so you can get your eyeball to move around, or you can animate it in a scene. So what I like to do is you can either create NURBS curves, or you can use a locator, and for this particular exercise we'll use a locator. Very simple, very easy to do, like so. Okay, so all I've done is create and then gone to the locator just down there. We've moved this into position, so what we can do is actually freeze its transformation, and again you can call it eye control, and you can call it eye control left or right depending on which one you have. Okay, and what we want to do is open up our outliner as well, so we make sure we've got things selected properly. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to middle mouse drag that to the top of the list here, because I want to sort of keep everything in a fairly good order. Okay, so what we want to do is constrain this eyeball to this controller, and then when we move our controller around, the eyeball will follow it. So under your animation menu set here, if you select your locator and then your eyeball group, like so, if you go constrain and then hit aim, and then open up your menu set and maintain your offsets just so everything's following things around. And what you want to make sure is that your weld up vector is set to Y, because that's what we're working in. Here's our Y down here, that's the up. But the aim is down our Z axis, so you want to make sure that that is at 1 down your Z axis, like so, and then that way you can make sure that your aim constraint is pointing in the right direction. Depending which way your eye is facing and which way your locator is, you may want to change either one of these values as well. So, but as for basics, this is what it should be set up at. Okay, so we're just going to add that now. So that's added, as you can see here in the channel box. These are now highlighted in blue. Whoops, there we go. And you can see by selecting the locator, the object goes pink. This means that there is a connection, and what you can do now is hopefully you can grab your locator and your eyeball will start to follow it around. Now what you may notice when I move it around, the locator isn't actually pointing at the eye, which is okay, it's not a problem. But sometimes if you're in a scene or something and you're not sure which direction something is looking at, then it's really worth adding another constraint just so we get the axis of these pointing in the direction that the eyeball is actually facing. So by selecting the eyeball group first this time, and then the eye control, you can go to constrain and then go to orient, and then just basically this is going to orient constrain the locator to the eye and keep those two guys or two objects pointing at each other in the right direction whichever way they go. So again, I've just maintained the offset for everything, and then just this is pretty much the sort of default setting that goes on in here, and I'm just going to add that, and that's done. Deselect that, and then just again by selecting the locator you can now see that it's following the center axis of the eyeball itself. So you can do this for two eyes as well, and then you can end up grouping the locators together, and then you can control both eyes at once, or you can select either eye, and then you'll have two eyes to control in two different directions if you need to. So hopefully that will give you, if you'll pardon the pun, an insight of how to create some eyes in a very basic way to get you going, and hopefully you've enjoyed that. So thanks again, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Cheers for now. Bye bye.